Okay, welcome back to The World is Storytelling, and welcome to The World is Storytelling, Rabbi Malcolm Herman. We were discussing about short, sweet, and to-the-point speeches and podcasts, and you had a fun story about that.
Oh, yes.
Tell us a story.
The story is about a rabbi on Kol Nidre night, the night of Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish year. And there are many, many Jews who flood to synagogue on that night, even though they're not regular synagogue goers. So the story is told of a rabbi somewhere in a very large synagogue in the States, and the place was packed out to the rafters. And the rabbi standing in the pulpit thought, this is my opportunity to really, really hammer home. So he gets up there full of enthusiasm and for a full 20 minutes gives the speech of his lifetime. Afterwards, so the custom is, Rabbi stands by the door of the synagogue and people file past to wish him a sweet new year. And one guy pauses and says, Rabbi, you may not recognize me, but I'm the presenter of a well-known television program that is broadcast every morning, a breakfast television program. And I want to ask you a question. We broadcast to millions of people. Do you think you could condense your speech into a 3-minute slot? And for a few minutes, despite the holiness of the day, the rabbi thinks to himself, wow, I could broadcast to the whole nation. My mother would be so proud. And he hesitates and says, you know what? I think I could. And the presenter pauses for a second and says to him, in which case, why didn't you? So you asked me to share a story. It's actually the first time we've met.
But when I was very, very small, I remember you. You're a friend of my father's.
Correct. Yeah. Yes, okay. Not the first time we met. As adults. As adults. And we meet on a very auspicious day for me because it's 2 weeks to the day before my eldest daughter gets married. So you surprised me by asking me to tell a story. And the story that's upmost in my mind is, I think, really the story of being a parent. In fact, Ronnie, you asked me quite a searching question. I probably should have asked myself this question a long time ago, but am I a good parent? So really I ought to bring in the witnesses, which is my own children, to testify to that, but because thankfully they are not here, I shall have to give evidence about myself. Yes, that's totally impartial. So what does it mean to be a great parent? Because actually, once you become a parent, that's going to be the most important story that we'll ever tell in our lives. So I'm going to tell a story of my own experience as a child. My late dad was a rabbi in a synagogue in London, a small synagogue in a place called Neasden, and it was the last synagogue of his career. I happened to be a triplet.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I always have been. 2 triplet sisters. So Neasden was a place, it was a lovely warm community, but there was no, by the time we got there, there was more or less no youth whatsoever. And this was on also a Yom Kippur afternoon. I was about 14 years old, and it's Yom Kippur is the Jewish fast day, longest Jewish fast day of the year. And it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is probably the most difficult time of the day. Long time from the beginning, stomach is rumbling. Long time from the end, a few hours to go. And to be honest, I was probably about 13, 14, and I was bored. I was at the back of the synagogue. My father, because he was the rabbi, sat at the front of the synagogue in the elevated seat for the rabbi, which was quite difficult. As a child, I couldn't sit next to him, and he was up there, bedecked completely in white. A white hat, a white cloak, and I, at the back of the synagogue, found something to mess around with. I do not recall what it was, but it was something that kept me entertained. Suddenly, I noticed from the corner of my eye, my father rising quite sedately from his place. And I realized he was coming in my direction. Now, there were probably about 150 people in the shul. The cantor at center stage was continuing with the service. And to be honest, people thought that this was going to be more entertaining than the cantor was at the moment in time. And all eyes watched my father as he was heading for me. Too late for me to grab the prayer book and start looking sincere. I've been caught. And I kind of played in my mind what my father might say to me, you know. And I thought I'm going to be turfed out of shul. Now, I do not remember exactly what my father said to me, but I'll never forget the exact message he gave to me. He came over to me, and the message was as follows. Malcolm, you know what Yom Kippur is, and I know that you represent, you're an ambassador for our family, an ambassador for Judaism. And this behavior is inconsistent with the person that I know you to be. So how did I feel after that? Did I feel that he had put me down? Or on the contrary, lifted me up? I definitely felt I let him down, but I felt, wow, my father really believes in me. I felt endorsed more than I felt cut down. And funnily enough, I always think to myself, I don't think I've prayed better in the final hours of Yom Kippur ever than I did on that occasion. So I feel that really segues into what I think should be the key components of the story of parenting, which are two things. Number one, to give our children a belief in themselves. They believe in themselves. And from a rabbinical perspective, as a rabbi, I would say, and that means that they understand that they have a unique role in God's world, unparalleled by anybody, past, present, or future. And that's a very vital component in terms of endorsing our children's belief in themselves. You have a role. It may take you time to find your role, but you have a role in God's world which is unique to you. And the second thing is to give our children the space to make mistakes and move on. I think those are two critical components in the story that any parent should be telling about their own lives as parents. So, story about my own child. This is the young lady who will, please God, be marrying in 2 weeks' time, when she was very small indeed. After my eldest child was born, which was about 2.5 years old, my wife became pregnant with twins and then gave birth to twins, which meant that I was very much hands-on in the mornings. Normally, I would go to synagogue in the mornings, but I was at home looking after our 2.5-year-old. On one occasion, I was standing saying morning prayers. And there's a particular point in morning prayers where you focus for 5 minutes and you try not to be distracted, which is much harder than it sounds, especially in this day and age. And there I was saying my prayers, and my daughter was then playing. She was, as I say, 2.5 years old. And suddenly she starts tugging up my trousers with the following words: "Daddy, help me. Daddy, help me. Daddy, help me." I looked down and there was a great crisis. Her crayon had broken in two. And what struck me most was the absolute conviction that she had that I could help her. Funnily enough, I actually thought about it in a philosophical sense and think, one second, she is talking to me as her father, and I'm talking to God as my father. And I wish I had the same conviction that she has about me. But what I like about the story is that children grow up in their early years with that belief that a parent can do anything. After a while, they become a little bit more skeptical. Normally by the time the parents struggle with their maths homework and that their illusions are shattered, they don't know everything. But we have to reverse that. Just as they believe in us, it's vital that we invest belief in them and nurture that belief in them. And even if we don't necessarily always like what they do, we must always leave them intact in terms of who they are, because that is critical in terms of that belief in themselves. The second story was where my daughter outsmarted me at a very young age. It's happened many times since, but she was about 18 months and I was giving her breakfast. She wasn't too, she got quite bored by food. And so breakfast was taking an inordinate amount of time. And I thought, being a rather, inexperienced parent at the time, I know what I'll do. I'll read her a story, make breakfast a bit more entertaining. After about 3 or 4 days, I realised that rather than breakfast becoming quicker, it was taking longer and longer and longer. Because she had realised that the longer she took, the more stories she got. It's amazing how intuitive children are.
So thank you so much, Rabbi Malcolm, for coming on The World is Storytelling.
Pleasure. Real pleasure.
And that was The World is Storytelling with me, Ronnie. To support The World is Storytelling, make sure to subscribe, rate, follow the podcast, buy the book, and get in touch. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.